Hey, I'm Raq.E and this is Raq.E Sews. Have you ever watched musicals where they play around with their big, beautiful skirts? Well, this is mine and I'm going to show you how to make it. So sew along with me. Let's start with the pattern, and we're going to do the skirt pattern first. For one, you need your waist measurement divided by 3.14. For the length, the full length of the skirt, 25 inches I picked, plus 1 inch seam allowance, minus the trim, minus your waist, which is A, equals 18.78. I know it's confusing. You're going to do it. You can do it. It's going to be fine. So I measure across my measurement 1, which was my waist measurement, divided by 3.14, which is pi. And I'm going to put my measuring tape at the corner and go all the way around. It's probably a good idea to write out all of your measurements the way I had it earlier, so maybe you could go back, pause it, write it down, and then fill it in for your particular size. So here I'm going to do the same thing from the corner and do my full length measurement all the way to give me the nice curve all the way around. Part of the reason why the full length is kind of confusing is because you need to account for the waist measurement that you're going to lop off to make your pattern piece. That way your skirt doesn't end up a lot longer or shorter than you wanted it to be. So here is my pattern. I have told myself it needs to be on a fold on one side and I labeled it. I'm going to lay out my pattern. Where I say fold, I put a fold. Magic of labeling. And I'm going to cut it around that edge and again around this curve. So with one of these pieces you can make a half circle skirt, but I cut out 2 so that I can make a much fuller skirt. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to take my 2 half circle skirt cutouts, 1, 2, and I'm going to put wrong sides together and attach them on one side like that. And then I'm going to open it like this and I'm going to do a basting stitch all along the inside, which is like where you would connect your waist. So here I have done my basting stitch, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the back thread and I'm going to yank on it very gently, because if you break this you have to do it all over again. It's terrible. And I'm going to scrunch this up and just keep going so that it measures my waistband piece. And speaking of, here's my waistband piece. I need 2 measurements. I need my band length, which is my waist, plus 3 inches seam allowance. And my band width, I decided on 2 inches wide. I'm going to multiply that by 2 plus a ½ inch seam allowance. And so here I've made my piece. I decided to put on a fold, so I took half of my waistband length for the total size of my pattern. I'm going to put on the fold and cut it out. This is how I measure them out, lay them next to each other and match them up. I'm going to mess with my ruffles until it looks good. Now that everything looks right, I'm going to put them right sides facing each other and sew along that edge, making sure that I catch this thread that I used for the scrunching process. I have these 2 pieces sewn together now, and I'm going to fold my waistband in half and put it carefully in place to cover up this salvage that I have left over from sewing those 2 pieces together. And this I'm just going to be very slow and careful about and make sure that my waistband looks really pretty and straight. I like to use a zigzag stitch for this because it keeps everything in place. And now we're moving on to our trim. So it's going to be a really long piece, and we need to figure that out by finding the circumference of our skirt and multiplying that by 0.75. You get the total, then you add the original length back to it to get, for me, 311 inches. Then I need to find the width. I decided on 7 inches plus a ½ inch seam allowance. So here I am showing it to you. My total skirt circumference was 178 inches. I'm going to multiply that by 0.75. Okay, I got 133. Then I'm going to add back the original 178. That gives me 311. That's really long. Let's see how close to it I can possibly get. Because it's such a big piece, I'm not going to make a pattern piece for it. I'm going to measure it directly onto my fabric. Kitty attack! So I'm measuring the width of my trim piece, which I decided would be 7.5. After cutting this, I'm going to use this as my pattern piece for all the other pieces I'm going to need. So I ended up having to cut out 3 strips to get me about the total length I needed. I didn't get all the way. And I sewed it all together in one big, long, crazy strip of fabric. Oh my god. And now I have to hem this crazy strip right there. And I wanted to show you the stitch I used just to keep things nice and flat and from rolling up on me. It looks pretty nice. And then I'm going to do a basting stitch on the other side to scrunch it up again. And I just want to show you, I broke my basting stitch, so I would stop and start it again. That way I had 2 sides to pull because that piece of fabric was just so long that I didn't want to break my thread and have to start over again or something else going crazy. I don't know. So just with the waistband piece, I'm going to line these up against each other, make sure I have enough room with the ruffles, put them right sides facing each other, and pin them into place. But that wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. I had to take my pins out. Yay! Put them back in. Awesome! Then take them out again. That's my favorite. Don't you love it when that happens? So what I ended up deciding to do was to take my strip and connect it to both ends of my skirt, okay? And work my way into the middle. That way I knew I was not going to run out of fabric. I was going to make it all the way to the end. And I did eventually! Sweet gods of sewing! Woo! Now all I have to do is attach my zipper. So basting stitches up here until this point, and then regular stitches the rest of the way down. I press this down for my zipper to lay flat, put the tab side down, and I'm going to pin it in place, being very careful to make sure that the teeth of my zipper are right along that seam I just made. So, very carefully, very carefully. And I always check it as I go to make sure it's still where I want it to be. And the last thing I have to do is bust out my zipper with my seam ripper, and I yank on the 2 edges of the fabric so that I can see the thread very well before I go in for the cut. And here is my skirt. It just makes me want to dance around like a salsa princesa. Yeah! And that's it. I hope you liked this video and you'll go and make your own West Side Story inspired skirt. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I will try my best to answer any questions you have if I was unclear about something. I don't know. Anyways, vaya con Dios.